Internship.
Adventure.
Đi học gì thế? Đi học gì thế? Mày phải cái gì cơ? Socket gateway handshake socket. Mình rất là đúng rồi. Oh shit. Oh shit. Chán rồi, luôn ấy. Tất cả không biết là gì luôn. Handshake. Nó giải list code rồi. Nó làm cái này nè. Ủa giờ đang bên này đang làm cái gì?
Bên này đang đợi dấu công.
À. Ok kìa, gửi bài cho bạn đang chán rồi. Thì code được gì kia. Hỏi nhiều vậy. Con yêu bịch quay đó. Hả gì? Một bịch có bao nhiêu vật mới hết thôi, không ăn đâu. Anh tiêu thụ dùng họ làm mua cúc mới.
Internship rồi.
Còn không?
Ở ngoài nó còn rồi. Ở ngoài. Ủa, thôi đi.
Bữa kiếm hàng giấy đâu đâu.
được data thì người ta cũng cần đó thì cái của mình ha. Còn nghe có khó trả có bỏ trong array cái số đầu tiên, xong rồi cái số thứ ba là bậc hai, cái số tổng cộng đây bậc hai thì trả ra cái số khác đây là bậc hai nữa.
Đây là mình quy hoạch rộng, đây là các bạn
Không biết cái đó anh giải qua rồi anh nhớ thôi chứ không biết cái hoạt động là gì. Ở trên trường có học cái này nè.
cái trường này kiểu nó không có sâu, giờ chỉ dạy biết thôi.
Mà có lớp data structure rồi thành chứ không,
Nhưng mà nó chỉ dạy cho biết thôi,
dạy chỉ để là dạy nói qua là có vậy đó,
kiểu vậy.
kiểu giới thiệu đó là cho chơi mấy bài kiểu làm quen đó. Hiểu không? Bản chất là hỏi em có đi code, nhưng bản chất là em phải tìm mình bao nhiêu cách để đi code. Bao nhiêu 4 thì có 1. Bước ra ca ca du ý. Bước chat rồi cha của mấy kia đó, chat là cái thằng CS work đầu tiên, mấy thằng kia nó đẻ ra từ từ để nó để đơn giản anh làm theo Win đang bị cái bot gì mấy cái generate cái dòng JavaScript is not enabled in this application mà CSS vẫn chạy, những cái lab của thằng Win vẫn chạy nhưng mà nó lại spot được cái dòng này. Nên dùng viết cái thẻ tay tiện hơn tại mình control được. Này class name nhiều khi không biết trong class name nó ghi cái gì. Market top mà
cầu quê làm như vậy được như vậy được chỉ là đó là cái comment đó.
xe Welcome back. We've nearly completed the few endpoints required for the rest. A client tool that will, in this example, that client, it will receive polls application. Similar to our polls module, giving our controller access to other features or services that we want to integrate Websocket to repository to show it to you in case you need it. And this namespace is a way to separate WebSockets into separate paths or features. We technically don't need this in our application because we're only going to be using WebSockets for this polls feature, but I just wanted to show it to you in case you need it. After fixing some formatting, I'll also mention we have not provided this gateway to the WebSockets gateway need to come in as a provider. So let's just add a comma here and say polls gateway and hope we get an import helper here. We do. Bada boom, let's save, and hopefully now when the server restarts, you'll see we get a log for polls gateway or WebSocket gateway initialized. Unfortunately, we are not quite done yet. There are a couple things. The unfortunate thing is that this client port is host or and that environment variable was client port. The unfortunate thing is that this client port is not forwarded on to the WebSockets or Socket.io server instance. Therefore, we have to come up with a way to apply it. Frequently, in the examples you see for setting up a polls gateway, you'll see that there will usually be a CORS op that would use in we've included in our node module, so we have access to this. And basically, IO adapter has a create IO server function, which takes the port and server options, and we can use this to add to the options some origins. And that's what you see here. So we'll then add some CORS origins, our local host ports that our React application will be running on, and then call super, meaning the main IO adapters, create IO server, with these options. And so our Socket.io adapter will take a constructor with our config service, and we have the application will be use this to add to the options some origins, and that's what you see here. So we'll then add some CORS origins, our local host ports that our React application will be running on, and then call super, meaning the main IO adapters, create IO server, with these options. And so our Socket.io adapter will take a constructor with our config service, and we have this config service in our main.typescript file. The normal or standard IO adapter only takes an app. So you can see in this constructor, they take an app and a config service, and then they call the super class constructor or the IO adapter class constructor merely with the app. But we'll have access to the config service, hyphen adapter form socket this from called with options, logger statement to it, CORS that we, and then our Socket.io adapter, and there's an error here. Let's see what that is. I accidentally used logger, so let's use socket WebSocket adapter. There we go. Accidentally used the wrong autocomplete. So now we have app.use WebSocket adapter with the app and the config service. And let's say log configuring Socket.io server, and then we log the object with the CORS options here. So we say configuring Socket.io server with custom to directly with the regex. After that detour to set up this custom adapter, I think it would have been a little bit too much. So next time we'll handle connecting clients to the server We'll log when a WebSockets client is connected, and then we'll maybe create some events handlers for things like joining a room. See you then. Is not valid because it does. Our case will be post methods. As a reminder, if you'd like to follow save to format that, implement handle disconnect. Let's actually cut these. I don't like the order, and let's put them here. And then I want connection to be above disconnect. Information has several methods. So for example, it can give us the name, which was polls. It can give us access to all of the sockets that connected. Whereas in our handler in the code, we only have access to the individual. Socket that connected, and those it would send the message did and sockets.size. Then I'll also log, actually before I'll log client connects, meaning this IO I will before the remainder namespace socket IO server. And let me show you what that looks like in socket IO's documentation. So here we are in our socket gateway, and this gives us access to all the actual, and let's call it version. We're going to and start from scratch right now in this tutorial. So for the remainder of the tutorial, I actually kind of want to introduce you to how you can work with WebSocket servers with Postman. That's not a very common use case I've seen, and so this would have been useful to me, so I hope it's useful to you. Let's open Postman. So I have a couple of clients already created. I'll save them and start from scratch so that you know how this works. So you could just go to new here within any workspace and then say create a WebSocket request. Then you'll want to go to this here, and instead of using raw sockets, you'll want to use socket.io. And then you can go into settings and set the client version. We're going to be using version 4, so make sure you set it to that. And I'll click save here. And then you can save it to a workspace. So I already have one called Ranker Workspace. So I'll just save it to here. And let's call it socket.io client 3, since I already have one. Get something here. Great. And then the next thing you'll want to do is add the URL. Server is at localhost 3 URL for the WebSocket server. Now I'm just going to go to one of these and copy it. Remember that our WebSocket server or our NestJs server is at localhost 3000. So I have a variable here that says WebSockets:// So instead of HTTP, we use WebSockets. And maybe there was an issue with using localhost, so I actually put the IP address of localhost, which is 127.0.0.1. The port will still be port 3000. So let's add this over to client 3. And let's actually try connecting right now. And as you can see, it shows add event listeners and it shows connected. So let's go back and look at our logs inside of our application. Let me open that terminal that was running, and you can see that a WebSocket client with this ID was connected, and this is what IDs for WebSockets look like. And it says one connected socket. Now let's go and connect one of the other ones. Now let's go and connect one of the other ones. Maybe let's go to client 2 here, and then I'll connect. Now the settings here are pretty much the same, and except that this one's going to be listening to 2 events. I'll show you that shortly, but it's connected, and so let's go back to the terminal. And if we go to the terminal, we see that Q8HV blah 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 is connected and that 2 sockets are connected. And heck, let's just do one more. Test client 1, connect. All right. And you see 3 sockets are connected. Now let's try removing this guy who's client 1. And you can do that by clicking disconnect up here. And our terminal shows that that same ID has been disconnected and that we're down to 2 sockets. Emit, actually this .io, .emit an event, and let's just call it hello, and it will send a payload. Maybe they'll send their client ID. So let's say hello from, and then the second argument could be an object, it could just be a string, but we'll just put a string, which is their client.id, like it's spell, and there we go. So when we say emit, that means this socket is also going to receive the message and all of the other sockets. So let's save, and let's go back to Postman. Let's go back to Postman now, and let's see, it looks like when I restarted the server, these all disconnected. And when you're in the browser, it'll actually usually automatically reconnect, but that's another issue. So I just created that event called hello on the server. So how do we listen to that? What you would do in this client is you would go to this events here, the one at the top, and you would type the event hello. You could give a description, and then I'll usually say listen on connect, so that when this client connects, it will also hear back that initial emitted event. So let's add that and save. And then these other 2 clients already had that. So you can see it already has hello. In fact, it has one called goodbye. Let's not do that for now. It's a little too much. And let's get rid of goodbye. And so let's connect all these guys. So let's connect client 1. And you can see when it's connected, it says it's listening to the hello event and the goodbye event. Did I not get rid of goodbye here? I thought I did. Maybe I didn't save it first. Let's disconnect. Let's save it. Let's try connecting one more time. Let's clear the messages. Well, that's kind of weird. I don't know why it's still listening to that. Let's go to client 2. And let's clear the messages and try connecting. Very good. And then client 3. And this one's only listening to hello. So maybe something kind of buggy with these event listeners. Let's go look at our logs. And you can see that it's still showing the client's connected. So these guys should see a message for hello. So let me try to figure out what's wrong. So I came back to the app, and I noticed what's wrong is the event is called hello space from. That was really ridiculous. So maybe let's say hello, and then the message will be from, and then we'll use some string interpolation to say from client ID as the message. Let's see if this will work now. Back in Postman, I have client 1 and I have it set up to listen on connect. Use some string interpolation to say from client ID. Back in Postman, I have client 1 and I have it set up to listen on connect. And for some reason, it saves the listeners down here. So if you want to delete it, you can just hover here and delete it. I guess I didn't quite understand that. I'm new to this. So let's connect. And you can see that it connected. It's listening to hello. And then it got a message that it connected itself. Now let's connect with client 2. And you see it receives hello from itself, which is D7R. And client 1 should also get this message. And you get from D7R. So we can see that client 1 can receive messages.
Lấy cái bánh này lại đi. Lấy cái bánh này. Lấy cái bánh.
When client 2 sends an event, and 1 should also get this message. And you get from D7R. So we can see that client 1 can receive messages when client 2 sends an event and then the server responds. That's all for today. Next time,
Đấy, hay đấy. Ông này hay đấy. Ông này dạy được gì đấy.
a server-side library, and secondly, a client-side library on the right. On the server, they create a very basic server on port 3000 here. And then you have this handler that says when there's a connection, it registers a socket. And this socket is related to individual client applications. And in this example, that client application would be running in someone's browser, and it would connect to that server on port 3000 as follows. When this is called, the socket will try to connect to the server, and the server will receive this socket, and the server will receive the socket, and then it will emit back an event called hello, and the second argument will have a payload called world. Therefore, when the client receives this hello message as sent from the server, it will receive the world as the payload or argument and then log world. Next, the client will emit howdy as an event with the payload stranger.
chứ sao. Có cái là thấy một người đi làm thấy người kia là không nhảy ra không lấy chế. Việc con
Này em chạy. Hôm nay em chạy cả tuần.
rảnh thì làm thôi chứ mà mất thời gian nhiều nó quá là mất cái thực tế là mình mới làm được. Để nhộn dưỡng tư duy chứ không mất hết.
Thế sau bị anh tham chắc là do chưa có u mình ù mà như vậy
nó xong nó tầm vậy
này chắc phải tắt phết kìa đó rồi chứ mà em vuốt vậy chắc chết này là này giống kiểu gì á chỉnh tổ hợp chỉnh hợp đó là có bao nhiêu cái trường hợp xảy ra ở đây không biết như bao nhiêu trường hợp nữa.
có chụp hình
em mới nhập chiều nay là mới thấy luôn cho nên là chắc
có rồi á. Nó ra ra.
Cái này cũng mới ăn sáng hay sao? Cũng mới ăn tại sao tôi đang lớp mình ảo vậy? Sao tên khác nhau vậy? Dạ, cái frame mình là gì? Destroyer, Terminator. Đây, frame mà Weevil. Cái từ này nè. Cái từ này nè. Weevil. Nẻo lắm nè. Mình thấy Quân đạt giải rồi. Giờ hết feedback là giờ chuyển qua giải quiz.
Instructions in getting started here. HTTP here, and then I put socket.io for this gateway. In our case, it will mostly be using WebSockets, but I just wanted to clarify that it could fall back to HTTP. The gateway will then call the polls service, which could call the polls repository and some of the imports. Separate WebSockets into separate paths or features. We technically don't need this in our application because we're only going to be using WebSockets for this polls feature, but I just wanted to show it to you in case you need it. After fixing some formatting, I'll also mention that we're going to add a logger with the name of polls gateway, the name of this class, and we will inject the polls service into it, which we have access to, because if you remember, our polls module, and in fact our entire application module, has access to configuration that we set up when the application launches. We're not going to use this polls service today, but this is just to understand that just as in the polls controller, we can call service methods like creating a poll or joining a poll, we'll be able to access similar methods that are appropriate to this for any generic server. So if we were to get our server, we would import the socket.io server type and replace the T with that inside of app server. So if we were to get our server, we would import the socket.io server type and replace the T with Docker Compose there. And then we can add it as a provider. Unlike controllers that has a very specific config, the WebSockets gateway need to come in as a provider. So let's just add a comma here and say polls gateway and hope we get an import helper here. We do. Bada boom.
Bada boom, bada boom, bada boom. Quá giàu đó các bạn.
Boom. Let's save, and hopefully now when the server restarts, you'll see we get a log for polls gateway or WebSocket gateway initialized. Unfortunately, we are not quite done yet. There are a couple things that we'll need to handle, one of which we'll complete today. Recall in our main.typescript file that we had to use the app enable cores to set up some local host origins with a particular Fortunately, we are not going to use the app enable cores to set up some local host origins with a particular client port, which is extracted from an environment. Variable in this line of code, and that environment variable was client port. The unfortunate thing is that this client port is not forwarded on to the WebSockets or socket.io server instance. Therefore, we have to come up with a way to apply it. Frequently, in the examples you see for setting up a polls gateway, you'll see that there will usually be a core to apply it. Frequently, in the examples you see for setting up core polls gateway, you'll see a polls gateway, something like cores, origin, and then an array of different origins that are acceptable for this WebSocket gateway. However, that would require us to hard code the port, and there's not really a good way to inject these runtime environment variables into our application. Or in other words, I didn't mean into our application, but into our @WebSocket decorator. There are some workarounds where you could use the .env library direct file that's removed. Dynamic port to the WebSocket. Oh, I'm misspeaking a lot today. I must be tired. GitHub, I meant an example in GitHub that I found very useful. And by GitHub, I meant Stack Overflow. I'm misspeaking a lot today. I must be tired. And this is an example of WebSocket's gateway in NestJs. I'm somewhat surprised it doesn't have more answers, but I really liked it. What they showed you can do is you can extend an I/O adapter, which is provided by NestJs platform socket I/O, which we've included in our node module, so we have access to this. And basically, I/O adapter has a create I/O server function, which takes the port and server options, and we can use this to add to the options some origins, and that's what you see here. So we'll then add some CORS origin, all these options are config files, and then they cluster merely with the app. We get with the up to the source folder. Why not? Adapter this, so we have some space, and form this class. So they import yes configure imports per function need to this called with options. Now create IO server could get called with the server.io that we'll have access to, and let import from NestJs common, and then we can say configuring socket IO server, and then we'll just pass these CORS options. Then we'll create the options. We'll take all of the original server in this block. After save that there, not quite. Let's maybe restart the application. So I've restarted the application and we're not seeing this log, and that's because I forgot probably the most important step, and that is to actually apply or use this socket IO adapter. You see, I have all these notes written down, and I should probably follow them. But let's go to main.ts, and just beneath, and then we IO adapter we just created that. We've now registered our socket IO adapter, and there's an error here. Let's see what that is. I accidentally used logger, so let's use socket WebSocket adapter. There we go. Accidentally used the and actually up here, so you see that we log configuring socket IO server, and logging do something like probably see that. So I'm socket. I think it works. Can just clone WebSockets packages or modules. And what we can actually import are two interfaces that are called on gateway connection. There it is. And the other one is called on gateway disconnect. Those, and then on gateway, what I'm going to do is hit command period and say implement the on gateway is for hand. Get these methods fired by the socket IO package for NestJs, which is installed combined with the fire handle connect and handle disconnect. Let's actually cut these. I don't like the order because it happened. It's just a sock, and I can get as well. Actual suppose other information. This polls get done. Socket IO is what we've defined here in our socket gateway, and this gives us access to a namespace of a socket IO server. And let me show you what that looks like in socket IO's documentation. So here we are in the socket IO documentation under the namespace section, And so a namespace is kind of a subfield or part of a server, and it has several methods. So for example, it can give us the name, which was polls. It can give us access to all of the sockets that connected, whereas in our handler in the code, we only have access to the individual socket that connected. The namespace can give us access to all of the sockets. Furthermore, a namespace allows us to use something called to-room, which means we can send a message to a narrower group of clients. So you might have 1 million clients connected, let's just say for example, but you only want 50 of them to receive a message. So you could assign those 50 clients to a particular room and send event.
Cái gì đấy?
Cái con này quen rồi ta. Con này quen rồi, thằng đang làm rồi.
Không có cái từ Kiko gì trong nha.
Xong rồi chưa làm xong. Chứ mình mới làm xong rồi. Làm lâu mà từ 2 tháng trước rồi.
CDM bong lại NestJs kit.
Nó là extra. Hiểu một chút thôi, không hiểu hết.
Tiếp đi. Yeah. 5:30 về. 5:30.
Học cái này nè, học
Đợi chút coi quá nghe.